Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. Together we dive into the world of sci-fi and science fiction. From episodes of Star Trek, Star Wars, to The Walking Dead, Resident Evil, all the hot new science fiction movies from the back doors of Marvel or DC. The Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. You'll never look at science fiction the same way again.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Sci-Fi Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah, and we are here to talk about sci-fi, fantasy, movies, books, comic books, TV, any manner of sci-fi, fantasy-related topics. And the first topic that we will be starting off with today is The Mandalorian on Disney Plus, because my social media news feeds have been full of not only Disney Plus, but The Mandalorian specifically the last day or so. I have not yet had a chance to watch episode 1, people have been very good about not posting any spoilers. I don't know if there's anything to spoil in that first episode, but so far I've had a spoiler-free social media feed, which is nice. What is The Mandalorian, you might be asking yourself? Well, let me tell you. It is from the Star Wars universe. It is, as I said, on Disney Plus, which is Disney's new streaming service. I believe you can get a free trial, a month-long free trial, and then it's something like $6.99 a month after that. And in addition to new content, I know they have a lot of the Disney movies on there. Probably a lot of, they own Marvel, and so they own Marvel, they own Star Wars, they own ESPN, but I don't think that ESPN stuff is going to be on Disney Plus. But hey, I could be wrong. The Mandalorian, also known as Star Wars, The Mandalorian, is an American space western television series that premiered on Disney Plus yesterday, November 12th. It is set, of course, in the Star Wars universe, and it takes place 5 years after the events of Return of the Jedi. So we have gone forward in time a little bit, not as much as the new trilogy, but a little bit from Return of the Jedi. It follows a Mandalorian bounty hunter beyond the reaches of the New Republic. So when you see the picture, you will see someone that looks like Boba Fett, or maybe you're thinking Jango Fett, depending on which trilogy you grew up with. For me, it's Boba Fett. It is neither of those characters. In fact, the synopsis is that after the stories of Jango and Boba Fett, another warrior emerges in the Star Wars universe. The Mandalorian is set after the fall of the Empire and before the emergence of the First Order. This series depicts a lone gunfighter in the outer reaches of the galaxy far from the authority of the New Republic. That is from Jon Favreau. So it stars Pedro Pascal as the voice of Din Djarin, the Mandalorian. He is a lone gunfighter and bounty hunter whom Pascal has described as being Clint Eastwood-esque with advanced combat skills and questionable moral characters. Also starring Carl Weathers, Werner Herzog, Omid Abtahi, Nick Nolte, Taika Waititi. I'm sorry, my eyes are suddenly all gummy and I can't read. Gina Carano and Giancarlo Esposito. And then, of course, there are also guest stars. And so Chapter 1 is out. It was written by Jon Favreau. It came out, the original release date was yesterday. Then we have Chapter 2 releasing on Friday. And then it looks like they'll be releasing each Friday after that. And so this first episode is directed by Dave Filoni, and it turns out that originally a live action Star Wars TV series was contemplated. It was thought about in 2009. Over 50 scripts were written by 2012, but due to their complex content, they were deemed too expensive to produce. In January 2013, following the sale of Lucasfilm to the Walt Disney Company, then president of the ABC network Paul Lee spoke to the current status of the series, commenting that we'd love to do something with Lucasfilm. We're not sure what yet. We haven't even sat down with them. We're going to look at the live action series. We're going to look at all of them and see what's right. We weren't able to discuss this with them until the acquisition closed, and it just closed. It's definitely going to be part of the conversation. In June 2014, more details regarding the series were revealed, including that Boba Fett would have appeared. So this has been going on, 2009, it's been going on for a decade, and it has just now come out in 2017, November 9th, so 2 years ago. The company chairman and CEO Bob Iger announced that Disney and Lucasfilm were developing a new live-action Star Wars television series for Disney's then unnamed streaming service. On February 6th, 2018, it was reported that Iger had revealed during another financial report conference call that investors that multiple Star Wars live-action series were actually in development by Disney, saying we were developing not just one, but a few Star Wars series specifically for the Disney direct-to-consumer app. We've mentioned that, and we are close to being able to reveal at least one of the entities that is developing that for us. Because the deal isn't completely closed, we can't be specific about that. And then in March of 2018, Lucasfilm announced Jon Favreau as the writer and executive producer of the forthcoming series. So this has really been going on for a long time. On July 12th, 2019, Favreau revealed that he had written scripts for the second season, and pre-production was underway. So that is exciting if you are a fan of it. There's only been one episode, but you probably either like it or you don't like it. So this story does mark the first time that Disney has taken one of its most popular franchises into the world of live action television. Fans and journalists discussed the first episode on social media, of course, with one writer describing it as very, very good, and many specifically referencing the ending, which includes a massive cliffhanger. Fortunately, massive cliffhanger, you only have to wait until Friday to find out what the result of that massive cliffhanger is, I assume, unless they're going to go back and redo, how sometimes they'll do a cliffhanger and then they'll go back weeks, months, years, and take the whole rest of the season to get you back to that cliffhanger, and then you still have to wait till season 2. Yeah. So the first season, as I said, runs for 8 episodes, and it has been confirmed that filming has already started on season 2. So if you like the first season, then you can look forward to a second season. Moving from Star Wars to comic books, superhero comic books, I'll say, because Star Wars does have its own comic books. Arrowverse producer has confirmed that there is one scene with all 3 Supermen together. Okay, so maybe you're a fan of Superman, maybe you're not, maybe you're wondering why are there 3, why are they together? As most Arrowverse fans are aware of by now, Crisis is coming, and along with that, Crisis is also a massive crossover event, which will take place over episodes of Arrow, Supergirl, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, and Batwoman. That's impressive. With cameos thrown in not only from the multiple CW DC series, but also from a myriad of other DC series and movies from the past few decades. It is a safe bet that the cameos fans are most excited about are Brandon Routh, taking up the mantle of Superman once more after his brief time as Superman in Superman Returns, and Tom Welling is returning as Clark Kent, also known, of course, as Superman from Smallville. So that means that alongside Tyler Hoechlin's Superman from the Arrowverse, we will have 3 Supermen battling evil during the Crisis. That's the fun thing about sci-fi fantasy comic books. You can have all these crossovers. They can make anything make sense, right? So producer Greg Berlanti recently spoke about the crossover when speaking to the news outlet Extra, and he said, "It's our biggest one yet. It's incredibly epic, and I think everyone is going to be satisfied. There are so many cameos, really great cameos. People have seen some of the castings we've had in the trades, but in one scene, we've 3 Supermen on screen at one time, and that's pretty cool. I hope they all get along. I mean, maybe they're jealous of each other. It doesn't necessarily mean that we will not get more than one scene with all the Supermen together, but, there's at least one. So that's something to look forward to. There will be 2 different Lois Lanes on the screen for the crossover. Erica Durance, who played Lois on Smallville for 6 years, will be joining Tom Welling for multiple episodes. And, that means she may appear in scenes alongside the Lois Lane of the Arrowverse, played by Elizabeth Tulloch. And just amazing. You should let me know. Are you looking forward to this crossover event? Are you all caught up with all of the series that are involved in the crossover event? Because maybe you watch one, but you don't watch, another one, or maybe you watch several of them, but you haven't caught up. At any rate, the crossover happens beginning in December, and I'm sure that there will be plenty of speculation and theories and all kinds of talk on social media and other places, forums about what this is going to look like, how it's going to play out, how the crossover event is going to influence any of those stories in any of those shows. So kind of exciting to bring back some, beloved Supermen, I assume. I don't know if they are beloved or less beloved. Probably everybody who watches shows like this has their own opinion on who their favorite Superman, Lois Lane, etc. Actor is. We are going to go ahead and take our first break of the podcast. When we come back, it's going to be aliens among us, possibly. Stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Sci-Fi podcast, and I'll be right back.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sci-Fi podcast. Before the break, we were talking about The Mandalorian and multiple Spider-Men in an upcoming crossover, not even episode, multiple episodes over multiple TV series with many cameos and multiple Supermen and at least 2 Lois Lanes. Now I want to move on to aliens. As many of you know, I also host the GSMC Book Review podcast, and I have had a couple of interviews lately that fall into the sci-fi fantasy realm. The first of which is a book by Christina Rienzi talking about aliens. And while I'm not going to play the entire interview for you, you can check that out on the GSMC Book Review podcast. I am going to give you the introductory bit, the part that describes the book and talks about her inspiration for it. And maybe if you are a fan of the alien genre, this will be something that you will want to check out in terms of putting it on your to-be-read list. So we are going to turn now to the interview with Christina Rienzi about her book called Among Us. The subtitle is We Are Not Alone. So just in case that doesn't tell you what this is about, it is about, aliens in the universe and, all those good UFO kind of conspiracy theories. Are they theories? The description of this is danger lurks in the unknown. Marcy Simon lives a double life, conservative professor of English by day and controversial blogger of aliens by night. But when a classified document lands in her lap, her two worlds collide in an explosive revelation of shocking and deadly secrets. Despite imminent danger at every twist, Marcy embarks on an unstoppable quest to expose the terrifying truth. Only she never anticipated the entangled nebula of dark lies, nor the never-ending wormhole the government would spiral through to silence her forever. Knowledge can kill. And Marcy knows too much. With global security at risk, no one can be trusted. To debunk the stratosphere of deceit, Marcy races at the speed of light to escape the grips of the clandestine extraterrestrial security agency, ESA, hunting her before she vanishes like all the others. But Marcy is unique. Despite being the ESA's prime target, she's also the skeleton key to the deadliest truth in the history of the universe. The nightmare is real, and it's only just begun. Marcy must take a nefarious leap of faith before her options and her breaths evaporate into a black hole for all eternity. That is the description of Among Us by Christina Rienzi. First off, I love all of the space references in that description on the back of the book. Lots of black holes, lots of, like nebula and all of those great words. Also, extraterrestrial security agency apparently is very hard for me to say, which is why, it's just abbreviated ESA a lot in the book. But this is, a thriller. This is, I was going to say it's a bit of a mystery, but it's certainly something that Marcy has to figure out to get through. It's life and death, because once she discovers a certain level of information, then her very life is at danger. But as it says, she's different. Why she's different? Well, you'll have to read the book to find out. And she goes through a lot. You'd think that just blogging about aliens and then having this secret document fall into your lap would be enough, but no. She goes through a lot, and there are so many twists and turns and dangers and just various adventures, that Marcy goes through, and then the twist at the end, of course, that I, can't tell you because you have to read it and find out for yourself. But there's just, it's very twisty. And I was trying to think of a space reference, and I'm sure that there is one, but off the top of my head, I am not coming up with it. All of those years watching Star Trek, and you'd think I'd be a Star Trek, Firefly, 800 million other different space shows between myself and what my husband watches. You'd think I'd be able to come up with a good analogy, and yet, no, my brain's like, no space analogy for you. So that's why I don't write the back of books. I do not write the blurbs, because I apparently cannot come up with the right analogy at the correct time. I'm going to stop blathering. You're probably happy to hear that. And we are going to get to the interview with Christina. Again, this book is called Among Us, and the author is Christina Rienzi. So let's go ahead and get to that interview. Hi, Christina. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for having me.
It is wonderful to have you here. We are here to talk about your book called Among Us. Before we get to the book, though, I'd love to get to know you a little bit. So if you could share something about yourself.
Sure. I'm actually a Jersey Shore girl. I'm a new adult thriller author, and I am a certified professional coach. Those are the main things about me. I'm also the former president of Sisters in Crime, which we'll talk about a little later, I think.
Yes.
And more recently, I'm a new mom. I have a 3-month-old little girl who's so sweet, and so I'm getting used to that life. I'm also a dog mom to 2 fur babies, and that's the main stuff to know.
The main stuff. So you're sleep deprived a little bit.
A little bit. She's good. She sleeps through the night, but it's a 24/7 on my head kind of responsibility I'm not used to, so I'm trying to get used to that.
Yes,
absolutely.
Well, that's wonderful. But we're going to talk about your book baby today, and that It's called Among Us. So if you can give a bit of an overview of the book.
Sure. It's about a girl from the Jersey Shore, which shocking, right? And she lives a double life. She is an English professor by day and an alien blogger by night. And she kind of gets herself mixed up in a government conspiracy. And she has an agency after her, so she kind of gets herself mixed up in a plot that just is a little bit more dangerous than she expected.
Right. So what was your inspiration for the story?
I've always been interested in these types of stories, like these types of theories of government conspiracies and what could really be out there in the universe. And I love the shows like Unsealed Alien Files. I love The Unexplained. I love anything that's, paranormal or kind of otherworldly, even like Ancient Aliens. I love to just think about what could be, maybe what already is. And I also have a lot of family that's been in the military, so I always think about that, like what really goes on. And so it was kind of a combination of like secretive kind of government, military things that I think about like could be, as well as just what is possible in the universe.
Mm-hmm. And there's so much that happens in this book. I don't want to give things away, though. It's because there are a lot of layers, and there's the conspiracy aspect, and I don't want to do spoilers. But let's talk about the main character, Marcy. What about her do you think will resonate with readers?
I think she's the girl next door. She's kind of a normal girl who wants to fit in, like many of us do, just wants to live a normal life. But there's something deep inside of her that's stirring, and she feels is missing in her day-to-day. And she's kind of, it's something that she feels is taboo and that people won't accept about her. And so she has this struggle to kind of blend in with everybody and also kind of feed her passion for what's, kind of taboo and not normal. And I think a lot of us go through that where we have this person we are on the outside, who we are at work, who we are to our friends and family, and then maybe like what we really believe or are passionate about that we're afraid to tell people, we're afraid we won't be accepted or maybe we won't fit in. But we have a passion for that, whatever it may be, and we struggle with that. I think a lot of us have two sides, and that's kind of what I wanted to show is that, normal girl who has an extraordinary belief in something that she wants to pursue, but is kind of struggling with allowing that out.
So I'm cutting this short because it is time to take our next break. Hopefully that was enough to intrigue you, to whet your appetite for this book. It's a fast read. It is a page turner. It has lots of twists and turns. And we are, as I said, going to take our second break of the podcast. That book is Among Us by Christina Rienzi, in case you have forgotten from before, just in case, because I do that all the time. We are going to take our second break of the podcast. And when we come back for our final segment, we are going to turn from, Star Wars to Superman to aliens to horror of all things. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Sci-Fi podcast, and I'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sci-Fi podcast. As I mentioned before the break, I am trying to give you a little bit of a lot of different subgenres of the genre of sci-fi, from Star Wars, space western, to Supermen, because there are more than one, to aliens, and now to, as I said, horror, although it combines aspects of mystery and fantasy. There's a lot of different things going on in this book. I recently interviewed Edgar Swamp, awesome name for a horror writer, by the way, about his new book, Amber Hollow. It is, as I said, horror, mystery, historical fiction, fantasy. It's kind of got a little bit of everything. And so we are now going to, you'll hear part of that interview, and maybe if this is a genre that you are interested in, you'll check out that book. Again, as I said, the book is called Amber Hollow. On July 14th, 1991, an isolated village in northern Wisconsin is ground zero for an unprecedented fiery tragedy. Of the community's 600 residents, there are only 5 survivors. Detailed accounts by the victims contradict one another. The only link is a man named Anthony Guntram, who they allege is the primary suspect. Because he is presumably dead, this claim can't be verified. Only the villagers know the secret of Amber Hollow, a place where sanity is checked at the town line and the parameters of reality become blurred. An unconventional horror story by design, Edgar Swamp delivers an action-driven page-turner that will keep readers guessing until the calamitous ending. And that line, sanity is checked at the town line, that is actually on Edgar's website on the page for Amber Hollow. Excuse me, I'm having trouble getting sentences out. It says check your sanity at the town line. So you see that there is this mystery. There is something that needs to be investigated because a 600 member community suddenly only has 5 surviving members. There's obviously something going on here. The police are brought in, and we follow the 2 detectives as they try to figure out what is going on. But all the questions they ask only lead to more questions, and everything that they find leads to more questions. It gets weirder and weirder and creepier, and you start getting the horror elements, and I really liked I kept reading because I kept thinking, come on, I gotta find out what happens. And I'd think, okay, maybe I see where this is going. Yeah, I have some ideas. Wait, nope. It's not exactly where I thought that was going. He does a really great job of putting in twists and turns and keeping you interested and guessing a little bit. You might be the type of person that's able to figure out books better than I am, but I enjoy when I'm surprised by a book, when I read something and go, no way, I did not see that one coming. Maybe I should have. And then my mind goes back to all of the things previously up to that point where I'm like, okay, what were the clues? Where were the clues? And if I had more time, I would probably read this a second time to see if I can track that storyline through to the reveal. But unfortunately, as you know, my reading time is taken up by a lot of other things these days. But yeah, this book got me to read horror, and it got me to enjoy reading a horror novel. So Edgar Swamp can claim that, that it's not that title, that prize, I guess. There is no prize. I should make a prize. What would that prize look like? This book got Sarah to Read Horror Novel Prize. I'll have to think about that. Maybe make a certificate or something. I'm going to stop talking now. We are going to turn now to the interview with Edgar so he can talk to you about his book instead of me talking to you about making random certificates for people I've never actually met, just talked to on the phone. So let's turn now to that interview with Edgar Swamp about his new novel, Amber Hollow.
Hi, Edgar. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi. Thank you for having me, Sarah. I really appreciate it.
I am very excited to talk to you about your new book, Amber Hollow. Before we get to the book, though, I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself so that my listeners can get to know you a bit.
Great. Well, I've always wanted to be a writer. In fact, the first thing I ever wrote was a play in 2nd grade where I cast myself as Santa Claus and the girl I liked as Mrs. Claus. Suffice to say, it didn't go anywhere. Doors were not opened, but it created a lifelong desire to write. And I've written in a number of different genres, influenced by dozens and dozens of different writers. But I found horror, sci-fi, dystopian kind of as a niche.
Mm-hmm. And yes, this book is definitely in that horror, fantasy, sci-fi kind of realm. I mean, it covers a bunch of genres. So, as I said, it's called Amber Hollow. Can you give a brief overview of the story?
Yes. A remote village in northern Wisconsin is the scene of a fiery tragedy in which, of the 600 residents, there are only 5 survivors. They're taken to Green Bay to 2 local hospitals where one's a psychiatric facility, the other one's a burn ward, and detectives are investigating the crime, and the survivors are all giving contradicting stories, but they're naming one person in particular who they allege is the primary suspect. However, he's amongst the dead, so the mystery lies within why are these people lying, who are they covering for, and how are they going to get testimony from a dead man.
Yeah, there's so many things I want to talk about, but I don't want to give stuff away because there's lots of twists and turns. But what was your inspiration for this particular story?
I really wanted to create what was an episode of mass hysteria. And initially I wanted there to be a plausible explanation for it. Ultimately, as I was writing it, I just couldn't find one. And so that's where the elements of fantasy and horror came into play. But the way I was writing it was kind of like I was kind of channeling the X-Files, where I wanted it to be 2 detectives. So that's where kind of the mystery genre comes in. I wanted it to be like a mystery being investigated, but with clues going nowhere. And so, hence, then it would have to gradually get creepier and creepier as the elements came into play to try to get closer and closer to the truth.
Right. And it does get weirder and creepier and more like I have no idea what is going on here.
And thank you. That was completely my goal. When I was doing my last drafts and edits, I tried to look at it as a person who was just reading it, and I was like, wow. And I never try to be self-congratulatory on anything. I'm a very, very humble man. But I feel like genuinely a reader is completely confused until they do get to the end where it's finally explained. And that was my goal. I mean, I truly hope that is what a reader is like, what is going on? And when they do find out, it was something that they didn't foresee. That was my hope anyway.
Right. Yeah, I had some suspicions going towards the end, but not to the extent of how it actually ended. So
cool.
Yeah.
I mean, because the idea is a lot of misdirection. You know, trying to get you to think it's one thing, you know, and then trying to get you to think it's another thing. That throughout it's just peppered with misdirection.
Right.
So somebody could go, oh, I know exactly where this is going. Then what?
Right.
Because I have always loved books like that.
So that wasn't exactly a cliffhanger, but it did kind of, drop off in the midst of conversation. There is much more to that interview with Edgar, as well as much more to the interview in the second segment with Christina. So check out those books if you are intrigued by aliens and or horror. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the GSMC Sci-Fi podcast. I'm going to give you my spiel, my plea, and that is that if you enjoy this podcast, please help us out by following us on social media and liking, sharing, retweeting, doing all those wonderful social media type things. Also, subscribing to the podcast is great. And the best thing you can do is to leave us a review. Hopefully, a lovely 5-star review. That is what helps us the most to get this podcast out to other sci-fi fans. So if you're so inclined, that would be awesome. But I'll still love you regardless. Thank you so much for joining me. Join me again next week when we will find out what else is going on in the world of science fiction. Have a great week.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.